Hello, lovelies. I am so glad to see you. And as always, I hope you are happy, healthy, and if at all possible, staying safe at home. Now, if you are looking for the answer to the age-old question, what's for dinner, then today you have come to the right place because I am sharing a quick and easy dinner recipe that is super delicious and just happens to be what I am serving for dinner at home tonight. It's this amazing oven roasted chicken with this creamy mushroom rice that I think you guys are going to gobble up. And it starts with these amazing oven roasted chicken thighs. I love cooking with chicken thighs because of course they're a little more affordable than say chicken breasts. I am using thighs with the skin on and the bone in. Those are even more inexpensive. So if you are looking to cut your grocery bill a little bit these days, then I definitely recommend this cut. It also gets nice and crispy, but stays really tender during the cooking process. It all starts by seasoning up our thighs. I'm doing that with some really simple dried herbs and spices. So I've got a bit of oregano headed on here. Now I love dried herbs in this kind of cooking because they don't burn the way fresh herbs do. And these are going to be in the oven for at least say 35 to 40 minutes. So you don't want your fresh herbs burning. Then I've got some dried basil, and we don't have to get fancy here, guys. You can really use any herbs and spices that you want. Whatever is in your pantry is going to work. Then I've got my dried thyme headed on here. I've got a good helping of garlic powder. Now you guys know how much I love fresh garlic in the kitchen, but fresh garlic loves to burn, especially if you're using minced garlic. So dried garlic powder is a great alternative if you're doing oven cooking. Don't worry, there will be plenty of fresh garlic in our creamy mushroom risotto, I promise. I'm going to hit these with a little salt and a little pepper, and then I'm going to get them into a preheated oven at 375 degrees Fahrenheit for between 30 and 40 minutes, or until it reaches a safe internal temperature of 165 degrees Fahrenheit on a meat thermometer. And in the meantime, we are going to get to work on preparing our amazing creamy mushroom risotto. And it all starts, of course, with some mushrooms. So I have got about 4 cups of mushrooms that are sliced, and I'm using cremini mushrooms here. White button mushrooms would definitely work if those are what you had on hand. Even portobellos would be fine here. And I'm just gonna get started by cooking my mushrooms in a little bit of butter. And you guys know by now how I feel about melted butter. It's kind of my favorite thing. I am using a nice big skillet. It's important that your skillet have a tight-fitting lid because we are going to be cooking our rice in the skillet with all of this flavorful mushroom goodness. Now this is technically what I call a cheater risotto. And the reason for that is a traditional risotto is made by stirring constantly between 25 and 30 minutes and adding your broth slowly but surely in batches. Honestly, I love risotto, but I rarely have the patience for that sort of thing. So instead, I make a bit of a cheater version that is just as delicious, I think, and still totally creamy. So as soon as our butter is melted in our skillet, we're gonna go ahead and get our mushrooms in. Now, at first it's going to feel like a lot of mushrooms, but we know that a lot of mushrooms becomes just a little mushroom very, very quickly as mushrooms tend to shrink during the cooking process. So not to worry if it feels like your pot is being overwhelmed by mushroom. You're going to see they're going to lose a ton of their volume in cooking. I'm gonna hit them at this point with just a little salt and pepper and then let them cook away for about 5 minutes or so, maybe 5 to 7 minutes, just until they start to release their moisture and they start to get nice and golden. You can go ahead and actually remove them from the pan. Not to worry, we're going to be adding them back in a little later, but first we want to get our rice cooked. So I'm going to take them right out and just transfer them to a bowl. I'm going to get another pat of butter into my skillet and let that melt. As soon as that butter is nice and frothy and foamy, we're going to go ahead and get some shallot into our pan. We'll let that shallot cook up for maybe a minute or so. If you don't have shallot, go ahead and use onion here. This is a very, very versatile recipe. There's no wrong answer. The next ingredient we're going to be adding is garlic, and a whole lot of it. Come on guys, the best part about social distancing is that you can basically eat all of the garlic you want and no one's really gonna mind. We're gonna let our garlic cook up until it's nice and fragrant and aromatic, and that means it is time to add our rice to the skillet. Now in this recipe, I am using some arborio rice or short grain rice. I really love it because it gets a nice creamy texture during the cooking process. If you only have traditional white rice to use in this recipe, you definitely can use it. Not to worry, like I said, this recipe is super versatile. Once that rice has hit the pan, you're going to let it toast up for just a minute or two. You wanna make sure you're stirring it constantly so it doesn't burn, but what's going to happen is it's going to take on a bit of a nutty aroma and you're going to see it become a bit translucent. That means it's time to get some liquid into our skillet. I am going to start by adding a good splash of white wine here. Now, if you are not into cooking with wine, that is totally fine. You can totally skip this step and just add your chicken broth here. I find the wine adds a little bit of extra flavor, which is why I like to use it. I've received a couple questions lately about what kind of wine I usually use in cooking, and the honest answer is whatever wine I have at home. Usually in cooking, you wanna opt for a dry wine that's a little bit acidic. So this is a Sauvignon Blanc. You could use a Pinot Grigio instead, but really most wines will do. Basically, all we wanna do is give that wine some time to evaporate, so you're looking at 2 to 3 minutes, and those flavors are going to concentrate and get really, really yummy. Then you can go ahead and add your broth to this. I'm using chicken broth, but vegetable broth is another great option. I'm also going to be flavoring this yummy rice with some fresh herbs. So I've got some thyme here as well as a bay leaf. If you do not have fresh herbs on hand, do not sweat it. Go ahead and use dried. You'll still get a really tasty dish. We just wanna let this mixture come to a boil, and as soon as we see those bubbles just breaking the surface, you wanna reduce your heat to low, pop a lid on this, and let it cook away for between 15 and 20 minutes. My friends, we are in the promised land. So as you can see, all of our liquid has been absorbed. We can remove our bay leaf and our thyme now because they have done their amazing work. Just discard those. And as you can see, there's no more liquid in our pan. Our rice is nice and tender. And now it's time to really bring it all together and watch the magic happen. Our first step is going to be adding our mushrooms right back into our amazing rice. We're also going to be adding some Parmesan at this point. Now the parm in this recipe is optional, but I will just say it is absolutely delicious. We're just gonna stir that in, and what you're going to start to see is a nice creamy texture happening, and that is the Parmesan working its magic. For a little extra green in this dish, I'm also going to be stirring in some peas. I'm using frozen peas. I haven't even thawed them. I'm just going to get them right into the pan, and that heat will heat them through. I've also got a little bit of freshly chopped parsley to round out all of these flavors. We'll hit this with just a little salt and a little pepper, and my gosh guys, this yumminess is ready to be served up, which is a very good thing because let's be honest, we're all hungry around here. Bon appetit. I hope you guys will give this tasty recipe a try for yourselves, and if you do, be sure to tweet me, Instagram me, or Facebook me a photo, because you know how much I love seeing your kitchen creations. Remember, the full recipe is linked in the description box below. You can find it there. And finally, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe because there's lots more deliciousness where this came from.